Hello and welcome to the She Reads Romance Books podcast, the ultimate show for romance book lovers looking for the best books worth reading. I'm your host, Leslie Murphy, and in each short episode, I share my favorite book list of recommendations so you know exactly what to add to your must-read list. Join me as I explore the romance genre and have fun collecting book boyfriends along the way, because life is better with a love story. Hi, readers. Welcome back to the She Reads Romance Books podcast. I'm super excited for today's episode because I am joined by special guest Mel Saavadra, who is the creator and owner of the Steamy Lit Box and the Steamy Lit Bookstore, and of course, lover of steamy romance books. We're going to be talking about all of those things today. So welcome, Mel.
Hi, well, thank you for having me.
We're welcoming everybody to the episode, so thank you. I reached out to you because I think it's awesome that you are one of the folks here in the U.S. who've opened a romance-only bookstore in South Florida, and I want to talk about that, especially in anticipation of Independent Bookstore Day coming up on April 27th. But I think for listeners and viewers, we should sort of get your origin story first with the Steamy Lit Box.
Sure.
So tell us about that awesome romance book subscription box and how it kind of came to be, if you would.
Yeah, so we got started in 2020, but we really launched 2021 with the Steam Box. I had joined Bookstagram earlier that year and really found community in just the book space and romance in general. And I was married at the time, and my ex-spouse was deployed throughout that whole year. And so I really turned to romance aside from like COVID and all the protests going on around the country, it was just a really hard year. And I turned to romance to just really, as I usually do, like just escape for a bit. And in doing that, I found a couple of things. One, like I wanted to have more conversations about like pleasure and sexuality and what romance books make us feel and how they are such a safe space for us to explore just like desires and sexuality in a sense. And then the other portion was diversity in romance. And as a Latina, I had never like read about a Latina falling in love on pages, right? So I wanted to kind of highlight both of those things. And I kind of made a passing comment like to a friend saying like someone should create a subscription box that pairs romance books and vibrators. And she was like, why don't you do it? And I was like, and that's kind of how the idea came about. If you ask anybody like who I am, I guess they'll tell you that I'm an action taker. And like, as soon as I have an idea of a sense, I think it's also anxiety. So let's give some credit to that. I like have an idea and I just like need to like get it done and see it through. And so the Steam Box came about, but in building the Steam Box, I knew that I wanted like an overarching company that was Steamy Lit. I wasn't sure what I would do with it. I wasn't sure like where it would even go, but I knew that was going to be important for me. And that's kind of how we got started.
That's awesome. I love the fact that your mission is sort of pairing those two ideas together. Let's talk about the authors first, because actually I shouldn't say my first, but I found a new author to me through a book that was in a romance book subscription box. And I think this was before Steamy Lit came about, but I found Angelina M. Lopez through romance book subscription box. And I was just like, oh, this book is awesome. And so I sort of delved into all of her.
Yeah.
So I agree. It's such a great way to find, new authors and to promote them in that way. Do you find that other readers feel that way who are subscribed to your romance book box and they're like, oh, I'm so glad that, I found this author through you or what have you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we try to be mindful about. I have like personal favorites, so I try not to like, always repeat them in the box when they have a new release. But, it is, it's part of like finding authors that maybe are not being amplified as much and getting those into the hands of readers to find a new readership and just a new audience.
And do you think, 3 years from 2020 or 4 years till now isn't a huge time, but do you find that more romance book authors of color or even LGBTQ authors are getting more space, or are people are finding them more, or they're being published more, or I don't know. I feel like there's still a long way to go, but still.
Yeah, there's definitely a long way to go. Has it gotten better since 2020? Absolutely. I mean, I talked about this over the weekend. We hosted Kennedy Ryan at the store. And when I walked into Barnes and Noble in 2020 to find Kennedy's books, they weren't there. Right. And so now they're everywhere. And so like obviously that's like the tangible progress that you can see. But the Lee and Low report just came out and 76% or 73% of publishing is still white. Right. So like, sure, we've made strides from the last report that I think was 92%, but like we still have a very, very long way to go. So I also have noticed, I guess maybe in my space, it feels like there is progress, but that's because I've made it that way, right? Like I made the book box, I've made the con, I've made the store to have books by authors that are underrepresented. So I am surrounded by that. And I think that that's important for all readers. And I mean, before I started Bookstagram, I was like your average, like I would see something on a Barnes and Noble table and it caught my eye and I wouldn't research the author. I wouldn't research like what it was about, their identities, nothing. Right. And then once I joined the book community, I realized how important that was. And I think part of my journey was just like reading books by Latin folks and being like, oh my God, like it's so powerful. It resonates with me. And that's when there was really a shift in like being more intentional about like what I was consuming and who I was reading.
If there were like 2 or 3 authors that you're like, you absolutely have to read these people, they don't get enough, press or whatever, who would they be?
Adriana Herrera for sure. Natalie Canya is another big one for me. I would usually say Kennedy, but Kennedy is doing so well right now, and that it's like really warms my heart. JL Seegers. I feel like if you love Kennedy Ryan, JL Seegers is such like the writing is so similar and the stories are so powerful and so deep. That everything you love about Kennedy Ryan, I think you can find in JL Seegers as well.
Awesome. Okay. I'm going to add all those names onto my list. I'm so jealous that you had that event at the bookstore because it looked like it was so much fun and her book was so good. I mean, I love the first one in the series, but this one, I'm just like, she is like nailing it. And I know I can't wait for the third, but anyway, we'll talk about that maybe in a minute.
And yeah, you know what? The third book with Hendrix's story, I think will be really special, especially for folks who are single, right? Because Hendrix is a single woman who is like career focused, doesn't want to have children. And I think there's so many of us that resonate with that. And I think that's the beauty of storytelling, right? Especially when it comes to romance, it's taking the power back in these decisions and making it a safe space for us to explore.
And I kind of hope too in that book with Hendrix's story that and maybe because she kind of hinted at, or I'm hoping she hinted at it in this one, that she talks a little bit about dementia and caring for a family member who has that, right? So, because I feel like that's what Kennedy Ryan does best, like in her books. Like it's like this central love story, but she also really like tackle the topic, or that I feel like, wow, like yes, or she taught me something, or it just makes me feel something different. And so I'm hoping that that's where she goes with that one. We'll see. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure she will, just because from like the conversations we've had, she's very much like I write with cause, and so I think a big cause for her is probably a single woman making a decision not to have kids, which is the big thing. But I think also the caretaking part will have a big role in it, and I think it'll be really special.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, back to the romance book subscription box, Steamy Lit. So I love that you also not only are trying to uplift these authors and pairing a romance book then with also a vibrator. So in this idea of we need to talk about sexuality more, or self-pleasure, or why is it still considered sort of so taboo? So what has that sort of been like in terms of reception, or how that mission you think is kind of coming to be with the book box?
Yeah, I think we get a mix. We get people who are like very excited about it, who love it. And then there's other people who like that's not their jam yet. Right. And like that's okay too. I say this often. I think embracing your sexuality is whatever it looks like for you, as long as you're comfortable and as long as you're removing shame from it. It doesn't have to be me who's selling vibrators. Like it doesn't have to be that, right? And I mean, overall, it's been great. I feel like we've had really good conversations within the community, and I'm hoping to do more of this. I feel like at the beginning, I had a stronger focus on embracing sexuality, where then I kind of put my focus on like the book portion. I'm trying to switch it back to have a good of both, because it's so important to continue to have those conversations and continue to challenge stigmas and just taboo, right, that society has put on us. And again, I think like being able to learn about what you like, what you don't like, and just different things about sex and pleasure in books makes it so safe for not only women, but non binary folks and queer folks. I think it's so important to continue to have that conversation and continue to drive it forward.
I absolutely agree. I think that's one of the reasons why I always say too that I love reading romance, because it is a safe place, like you said, to sort of think about, oh, I never thought about that, or maybe that is something I want to explore, and doing it in or exploring it in a way where you can just think about it and process before you're maybe trying it in real life or whatever. But I think even with romance in general, just reading romance still has the stigma like that there's something just wrong with reading a romance, let alone a steamy romance where you might be exposed to those things that are kind of catching your eye. And I don't know, like I feel like we're still, fighting that uphill battle with just romance in and of itself. Would you agree or yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think now that I'm back on the good old dating apps, it's always really interesting to have conversations about like, what are you reading or what do you do for a living?
Sure.
And, some folks have a great reception for it. Actually starting a podcast with like my like guy best friend who has started reading romance because I was like, you are a reader and I need you to start reading this. And now he's working through all of Kennedy's backlists. And we have like really good conversations about that, right? About men, about why men are so closed off to romance. What does romance challenge in men and masculinity and just the patriarchy in general? And I think that's all part of it, right? Like a lot of the things that I've seen on like TikTok, it's always men saying like these like standards, right? Like these, and it's like, well, no, you don't like romance because we're giving you standards. Like you have to meet these standards. It's not
Right.
even that they're unrealistic. Like when you are reading a romance book, you know that like, sure, like there's some billionaire romances, right? Like, sure, you can call that a little bit like, I hope it happens for all of us, but it's not, right? Um, but in your average contemporary romance, you're gonna just read about a man who really loves and supports the heroine. And that's all we're fucking asking for. So if that's an unrealistic expectation,
Right.
then like the bar is on the floor, you know?
It's
So
low.
yeah. And again, right, I think again, back to the patriarchy, right? It's it's the sense of oppressing anyone who's not a white cis man, right? For the most part. And so like romance challenges that. And I used to say like it's because it's for women by a woman, but I think that that takes out all of queer folks out of the conversation, right? Because that's also not a true narrative. So I think it's just really any identity that challenges the patriarchy and what they have made a social norm. It's by us, for us, and that's a problem to them.
Yeah, no, I agree. What are your thoughts too on like the whole idea of needing discreet, book covers? I'm assuming you probably don't buy discreet book covers for your Steamy Lit box. Maybe you do, but I don't know. It's still like, is that continuing
I don't,
or not?
yeah. So I think it depends what the conversation is, right? Like, so I've seen some folks who talk about discrete covers in a way where people should be ashamed of the regular covers, right? And I think that that's something we have to unpack because that's our own like biases and our own societal norms that are like coming up, right? But I do think like I used to work in athletics, right? And I used to be in the Navy, both very male dominated environments. If I showed up to my workplace with a book with abs on the cover, it is for my own safety that I would prefer the discreet cover because I am going to get comments. I mean, even when I would be just reading on my Kindle and someone would ask like, what are you reading? And I'd be like, oh, a romance book. There was always like remarks from men that made me feel uncomfortable. And so like I could see that side of it. Again, right? I think with discreet or non-discreet covers, it's again, it could be your preference. That's just like what you like. You don't like chest. I mean, there's like bookmarks now that are shaped like a penis and like people love them, but like I don't think penises are pretty and I don't use bookmarks. So like I am not going to, right? But it has nothing to do with like being ashamed of pulling out a cock mark. I'm happy to. It's just my preference, right?
Sure.
So like I think when we are having these conversations, it's important to check in with ourselves and figure out where is that coming from? Is that coming from a place of like shame or is that coming from a place of like I just really don't like it, like and being able to unpack the two and tell the difference so that we could really move the conversation forward.
Right. Absolutely. And it's okay to have your preference. Like you said, your preference doesn't have to be their preference or what have you. There's no
Right.
like, this is where it needs to be. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
I agree
And
with
and
that.
I think within the community, it's really important to not shame others for what their preference is, right? And I feel like I've seen a lot of this through the past years of like not reading closed door romance, preferring steamy scenes. And I feel like at the beginning of some of these conversations, I also partook in them because I was like, oh, well, this is preference. But then I didn't realize how that was affecting the community in general, right? Like, how does that make someone who loves a closed door romance or who experiences sex and love and relationships in a different way than I do, right? How does that make them feel when I'm saying, oh, closed door romances don't matter? That's absolutely not true. Theme and my, or just like I feel like it's such a spectrum. It's so based on you and your experiences and what's comfortable, what's not comfortable for you. And so just being able to like have those conversations in a respectful manner where we're also not yucking someone else's yum, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So how did you move in from Steamy Lit Box now to the bookstore? Tell us all about the bookstore and how that's been going.
Yeah. So it was kind of a slow process. Like with the Steam box, we started just having some extra stock of like books that we would put online. Then we started doing like pop-ups or book festivals. And then that kind of was like my first entry into like book selling for real because it's a different beast. Like when you're ordering books for a subscription box, you're ordering the same hundreds of books for the same title, right? And when you are stocking for a festival or a bookstore, it's like completely different. And so LA Times was our first festival that we went to, and that was actually a year ago. Um, and we slowly kind of just started building like our merch online through Steamy Lit. Again, like I always knew that I wanted the Steam box and Steamy Lit to be different, but I had never thought of doing a brick and mortar because I was married to someone who was in the military. And because of that, I never even thought like a brick and mortar was a possibility. And then after I got divorced and I moved back to South Florida because I was in California at the time, I was like, indie bookstores near me. And there was none. Like there's a couple that are in Miami. Miami's about 50 minutes from me. But that's it. Like I would almost say that we're very much a book desert for indie bookstores. I mean, there's obviously Barnes and Noble and things like that, but no, really, like the one bookstore that has 3 stores is the same bookstore. And then we have one more in South Florida. And that's it, really, aside from like Christian bookstores. And so I was like, interesting. I feel like there's something here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told my mom, and she was like, okay, first of all, like you need to get through Steamy Lit Con and then like start planning your next.
First things
And I
first.
was like, yeah, okay, sure. But in the meantime, just keep an eye out. And anyway, I didn't have any plans to open the bookstore until this year. At some point, I had even signed up for there's the American Booksellers Association. It's kind of like an overarching association for indie bookstores. And they do like a convention. It's called Winter Institute. And in that, they have like a book selling program. Like if you want to like start your own bookstore, like I had even signed up for that because I was like, obviously there's just a whole different beast. Like I don't know. Like I'm sure there's a lot I don't know. And then the perfect space became available like 8 minutes from my house. And I was like, well, I guess like we're moving forward with that. It just ended up working out really great. And yeah, that's kind of how the store got going.
I'm sure it is a completely different beast. I mean, I would just be overwhelmed by what to even order and, stock shelves, that kind of thing. But is there, so customers who are coming in, is there something that they're totally gravitating towards, or, South Floridians, do they love a certain trope or something?
Dark romance, and we have like a morally gray shelf. They are both, they sell the most. I think in our grand opening, we sold, like, we had barely any books left on both
Wow.
of those sections. It was insane. But and fantasy, like romantasy or like otherworldly, is also big for us. Yeah, I would say those are probably the two most popular. But I think it's also with the times. Like I think both of those like subgenres are really popular right now. So I don't think that it's anything specific to South Florida, really.
Gotcha, gotcha. Has anything been, like, really eye-opening or different that you didn't expect, like, in terms of having a bookstore that you're like, "Oh, didn't plan on that," or "That's interesting."
I think just the stocking of it all, the bookshelves, like you don't realize how many books the bookshelves can actually fit. And I was like, oh, I think we're good. And we were not good, so just that. And we
Meaning
had
you could
issues.
fit more than you thought you could?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So we
gotcha.
had to just order more stock. And I guess like on the business side, like I didn't think we would have an issue opening the store because it was a bookstore, and then it became like a whole thing with the county. They wanted to label us as an adult store in the same vein as like a sex club or a strip club.
Because
And
you sell vibrators there, or because of just
well,
the book?
we don't sell vibrators. So it was because of the books. And we had to retain lawyers to like help us fight that a little bit. And it was like a month and a half probably going back and forth with them, providing them like titles of books we might carry. I like that. I did not expect at all. And it was really more like we couldn't even open there. Like, and at that point, that was an issue. We already had the lease signed. Like, no one expected for zoning to tell us we were going to be an adult store. So that was really interesting for us. But I mean, we came out on the other side. Thankfully, we had support from the American Booksellers Association as well, who sent in a letter for us. And, especially in Florida where there's like so many book bans right now, it was just kind of like crazy to even like see that.
Yeah, yeah, firsthand especially. Gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I hope it's been fun too on the flip side, and super successful. But as you said earlier, not only, okay, you have the subscription box and the bookstore. And so tell me about LitCon. That sounds really, Steamy Lit Con sounds amazing.
Yeah, it is. Steamy Lit Con is part of our Steamy Lit Foundation, which is our nonprofit. And really, the goal with the foundation in general is to raise money to be able to provide scholarships for authors part of marginalized communities and identities to kind of remove some of those barriers to publishing. So if they need to pay for an editor, an agent, whatever it may be, they can apply for scholarships through us and we can help fund that. And in the goal of that is kind of what Steamy Lit Con was raised so that we can start raising funds for that. Except a convention is so expensive to put on. My God.
Especially in
It's
California,
ridiculous.
right? Isn't that where?
Yes,
Yes.
especially in California. We're right now in conversations to see if we move it from Anaheim to San Diego to see if like that helps us bring the cost down some, just so that we can really raise funds for like our end goal. But I mean, Steamy Lit Con was born from the same place Steamy Lit was born. It was me wanting to create a space that wasn't primarily white. And we definitely achieved that. I mean, not only by like our authors, but also like the readers who were in attendance. And that was really great to see. I had told my co-host Cookie early on when I started Steamy Lit, like I would love to do this one day. And she was like, whenever you're ready, you let me know. And our first kind of order of business was like going to other conventions and seeing what was out there, if it was even needed, like maybe something like this had already been created. And Cookie had a lot more convention experience. Like she had gone to a lot more romance cons than I ever had. So, I mean, for me, I think it was like not shocking, but shocking how white these spaces were. And so I was definitely like, I'm ready to do this. And I had a conversation with Adriana Herrera actually about it. And I was telling her kind of like what my goal was. And Adriana was like, well, if you do it, we'll support you. Like, you just let us know. And I think I just needed to hear that to like know that I can get this going and underway. And it did. I mean, it was beautiful. We raised like $185,000 to be able to put the convention together, which was amazing. We did a lot of different fundraising things, which was so great. And yeah, now we're going on our second year, and our third year will be 2025. The dates will change a little bit, but yeah, we have tickets are sold out. We sold about 1,300 tickets. So we have about 200 authors, around I think 10 narrators, and yeah, we're really excited.
It looks amazing. I saw the author list and I was like, wow, she got some
Yeah.
really great people together. I'm impressed. So I think it'll be fun.
Thank you.
What are some of like, given your goal and mission behind it, what are some of like the panels that you have for it or things that are discussed during it? I'm just curious.
We have not started doing any of the programming yet. So some of the feedback we got from the con last year was that they wanted to see more diversity within the panels itself. So that's something that we're working on. We've established, or we're working to finish establishing our DE&I committee to just help us kind of be like a check and balances for us as we make programming, make sure that like our own biases aren't getting in the way and address that, and make sure that it truly is at the inclusive space that we want it to be. So nothing on programming yet. There'll definitely be some kind of diversity and romance keynote in like the state of diversity and romance. And then aside from that, we kind of ask our authors just what kind of panels they would like to see or what they would like to participate in. And we kind of start building the list off of that.
When do your tickets usually go on sale? Like for 2025, when do they usually go on sale?
So this year, we ended up postponing ticket sales until January, which actually seemed to work well for people. I think post the holidays was really good for them. But initially, they were going to be in November. But with everything that was taking place at the time, we decided to move it to January.
Okay, awesome. Put that on my calendar. Don't miss the ticket. As I said earlier, Independent Bookstore Day coming up on April 27th. How can listeners, people tuning in, support you with the box in the store, or tell us where we can find you?
Yeah, so steamylit.com is a great hub for everything. All of our books that are in the store are on there. Our subscription boxes are on there too. Yeah, it's a great way to support. And if not, you could just, give us a follow on social. That also goes a long way.
Awesome. Yay.
We're also on Bookshop and Libro. So if you set up your store to like Steamy Lit, we get like a percentage of whatever you buy from them, something like that.
That's awesome. That's a great way to support it. And I'll put those all in the show notes so people can be sure to do that, because that would be awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Mel. I really appreciate it. I'm so impressed by all that you're doing. I can't wait to see what comes even more in the future. But you're a rock star during all that
Thank
you do.
you.
Sleep at all? I'm not really sure.
You know what? I get this question asked all the time. And if there's one thing you don't have to worry about is my sleep. Like, my sleep is golden to me because I can't function without it. Everything else, like, have I ate? Have I drank water? Have I peed? Like, those are better questions. Have I slept? Always. Sleeping is definitely important.
Well, good.
So are all the other things, but
but you have your priorities. That's good. That's good. Sleeping
Well,
and
thank you for
reading and
having
everything
me.
else. Yeah. Of course. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again. Good luck with the con coming up. And then to all my readers, happy reading, because we know life is always better with a love story. And there you have it. As you heard, Mel has so much going on in the romance book scene, but she also makes time to read romance. We actually chatted a lot more about Mel the Reader, where she talks about why she reads romance, who her favorite book boyfriends are, books that have some of her favorite steamy scenes, and so much more. You can catch this extended interview on video when you join the She Reads Romance Books book club. Just visit shereadsromancebooks.com/book club to learn all about the club and join today. In addition to gaining instant access to my exclusive extended interviews on video, like this one with Mel, you also gain access to all of the book club materials for our book of the month.
For May, we are going to be reading 9-Month Contract by Amy Dawes, and we're going to be meeting up on Zoom at the end of that month to talk all about it. And we're also going to be meeting online with Amy to ask her all of our burning questions about the book. It's really going to be awesome, and I hope that you can join in the fun. Now, remember to be sure to support the Steamy Lit Bookstore this coming Saturday, or your local independent bookstore for Independent Bookstore Day. And of course, support your independent podcaster, me, by making sure you click that star rating after this episode. Thank you so much. That's all for this episode of the She Reads Romance Books podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and found some new books to add to your TBR list. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really helps me reach more romance book lovers like you, and I appreciate your support. If you're a book boyfriend collector like me, then you'll want to join my email list so you never miss a podcast episode or a new book list. Just visit shereadsromancebooks.com/join and sign up today. As a thank you, I'll instantly send you my list of top 10 book boyfriends that will make you swoon. Trust me, you don't want to miss this list. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.